What is going on, everyone? Happy Wednesday. Welcome into GC Live at the buzzer with your host, Jack Veltri here. I appreciate all you guys tuning in on this, at least in Columbia, dreary Wednesday outside. Obviously, the main talk right now is South Carolina football, as the Gamecocks are 7-3 on the year and looking to beat Wofford to close out the homestand and all home games for the year before a trip to Death Valley to face Clemson next week. But before we talk football and stuff the rest of this week, a little interruption here, little segue, talking some hoops. Obviously, South Carolina women's basketball is off to Clemson tonight to take on the Tigers in the in-state rivalry game, and then it is off to California to take on UCLA, very good program, on Sunday out in LA. And then men's basketball, they're coming off the tough loss to Indiana at Assembly Hall, but they're back this week taking on the Mercer Bears tomorrow night at Colonial Life Arena. Got a lot to talk about. We're going to be talking about women's hoops first, break down a little bit of what's to come this week. We'll talk some men's hoops, and then we're going to be breaking down South Carolina men's basketball signing class with On3's own Jamie Shaw here in a little bit, starting at 11 o'clock. So hope you guys are all doing well. Thank you for tuning in. If you're doing so, be sure to go ahead and subscribe to Gamecock Central's YouTube page, as well as give this video a thumbs up if you're enjoying it and liking what you're hearing. If you have any questions or anything you guys want to talk about for the time being, let's do it. And if you're not already, go ahead and also subscribe to GamecockCentral.com. Got a lot of good coverage going on over there with football, basketball. Got a lot of great stuff going on over there. Without further ado, let's get into all the action. But first, want to talk about our main sponsor of the day, Clint Hammond of CMG Home Loans. If you're like me, living in an apartment right now, and maybe you want to take that next step to purchase a home, or maybe you're just in the market to buy a home in general, or you need help with your mortgage and you don't know where to start or who to go to. Well, I've got great news for you. The guy right above me here on screen, Clint Hammond, is going to be able to help you out and get everything situated. So Clint has been in the mortgage industry for a very long time now. He is a lifelong Gamecock fan, and he's also been a longtime sponsor of all of our GC Live programs. So I don't think it gets much better than that. So if you're interested, give him a call, 803-422-6797. The NMLS number for him is 71597. Or you can go to ClintHammond.com. Like I said before, he'll help you out through the entire process, take you step by step. If you have no idea what you're doing, give him a call, because that is the guy to go to. So I want to thank Clint Hammond for being a longtime supporter and sponsor of all of our GC Live programs. So thank you, Clint. All right, so without further ado, now let's get into the basketball side of things. We'll start with the women first. So obviously South Carolina's coming off 2 blowout wins. They beat Coppin State last week, and then they closed out the week with another blowout win over East Carolina, winning 95-44. And that's kind of what South Carolina needed, right? They opened the year with 2 tough games against Michigan and NC State. And look, it hasn't been a perfectly painted picture yet for the Gamecocks, but this past week, beating up on 2 teams, one of which I know Coppin State is a name that South Carolina fans don't like to hear, but hey, look, you play who's on the schedule, right? And then obviously East Carolina, an American team in football standards, Group of 5, but mid-major program in basketball. And you wipe the floor with them. Like, to put into perspective, South Carolina's bench scored more points than East Carolina did as a team. That is quite impressive, to be honest. And look, it has not been perfect. You would like to see the 3-point percentage go up. You'd like to see them make more free throws. I mean, 65% at the line, 19 of 29 is fine, but you'd obviously like it to be better. And look, I think you're seeing slowly but surely, I think this team's going to be able to come together and make it work. I do think it is good that they're kind of going through a little bit of adversity. I don't even know if you want to call it that at the start of the year, where they have those 2 tough games to open the year. But it is nice for them to get these blowout wins to kind of build the confidence up, get more players in, kind of see what you got, because now you're heading into a really tough 2-game road trip where, look, I know people are going to scoff at that, but and look at like Clemson, like, oh, yeah, but didn't South Carolina beat them 109-40 last year? Yeah, that's true. And look, Clemson obviously is not on the same level as South Carolina, but it's a rivalry game nonetheless, and it's at Clemson this year, and Clemson's off to a good start, even though they really haven't played anyone. And it could be a tricky game if South Carolina doesn't get off to a good start and play their brand of basketball. I fully expect them to win this game and win convincingly, but you never know. This is college basketball, and anything can really happen. But it has been good to see South Carolina as a team seemingly play a lot better. You now have Ashlyn Watkins back, and she hasn't played a ton. Like, she only played 11 minutes against ECU the other day. But you know what? Look, with her situation and stuff, that's a whole nother thing. It's good to see her slowly building back up, because obviously, I don't think anyone really expected her to be back in the starting lineup, playing 25 minutes a game. And look, when she's in there, she's productive. I mean, she had 8 points on 4 or 5 shooting. Yes, she had 3 personal fouls and 2 turnovers and stuff. But, she also had a block and 2 steals. So, all things considered, I think that's pretty good. And then I think you're starting to see South Carolina really spread the ball around. I mean, there wasn't one scorer on the floor on Sunday that was just like head and shoulders above everyone else. And I think that's a good thing, because it means you have multiple girls on this team that can go out there and get buckets. And look, Tina Paopao had 9 points. Sanaya Fagan had 10 points. Chloe Kitts had 14. Bree Hall had 10. Off the bench, Joyce Edwards had 12, and Malaysia Fulwiley had 12. So my point is that it's not, obviously with this team, it's not a one-woman show. It's everyone seemingly getting involved. And when you can have as many double-digit scores as South Carolina had in that game against ECU, I think that's a really good sign. And look, I know it's ECU. I know it's not great competition. It's really going to pick up from here, obviously, starting tonight. But I think for South Carolina, that's kind of what they need, is get as many people involved. And when one shot isn't falling from one person, someone else can go out there and get buckets. So really good to see for the women's team there. After Clemson, here's where it gets really, really tough. Oh, and by the way, if South Carolina beats Clemson tonight, that will set a program record with 43 straight wins. Again, if they beat Clemson tonight, that makes 43 straight wins in a row, which would set a program record. That is absolutely insane. I mean, you got to think about how tough that is, because South Carolina didn't lose it all last year. And I mean, the last time they would have lost would have been 2 years ago. That's crazy to think about. So the things this program's doing are nuts. And I think at some point they're probably going to lose a game. But again, I think this is, and that's not me knocking them. I mean, it's okay to lose a game. But I think this team, we're going to learn a lot about them over the next 2 weeks here, because at Clemson, at UCLA on Sunday, who's ranked number 5 in the country. Then during the week of Thanksgiving next week, because they go to Fort Myers, next Thursday, number 8 Iowa State, and then Purdue next Saturday. Then after that, it's the ACC SEC challenge with Duke coming into town. That's number 14 ranked Duke on Thursday, December 5th. And then you go to Fort Worth, Texas to take on number 19 TCU. And that could be that's a really tough stretch for the better part of the next 2.5 weeks. And I think we are going to learn a ton about this South Carolina team and really see what they're made of. Because look, if they drop a game, it shows that, for one, they're human and it's okay to lose a game. At the same time, it's also like, okay, like, where do they need to improve, right? And if they end up going through this stretch without a loss, if they can win all these games, I think it just shows you that, hey, this team, they're not losing anytime soon, because you look at what's to come after the last, because again, from Clemson to TCU, that is, you're playing 4 ranked teams in the span of 14 days. That's crazy. But after that, it's South Florida at home, Charleston Southern, Wofford, and then it's off to SEC play, where, look, things are obviously going to get tough again. But again, if you can make it through conference play, or I'm sorry, non-conference play without a loss, I think that really just shows, yeah, this team might struggle a little bit here and there, but you know what? They're finding ways to get the job done. And even when things look tough, they're still that team. So that's really good. That'd be something really good to see what this South Carolina team is made of, because we will learn a ton about them over these next 2.5 weeks. Like I said, Bruce says, thanks for all you do. I live in Virginia, don't get a ton of Gamecock coverage. You guys all do a great job. Well, thank you so much, Bruce, and I appreciate you tuning in. Thank you for the kind words. R.L. Smith says, good point. A loss isn't going to end. Exactly. Not going to end the title expectations. Absolutely not. Look, you lose a game, it is what it is, right? You aren't going to remain perfect forever. And I think that would it help South Carolina? Maybe, like, to kind of, like, I don't know if they, like, I don't cover the team on a day-to-day basis, so I'm not sure exactly what goes on in the locker room and stuff. But I don't know, like, is there a certain amount of pressure they feel with having the win streak? Do they even think about it? Do they even talk about it? That's the thing. I doubt it, but it's like, they try to take it one game at a time, obviously. But, with media and stuff, it's going to get brought up. So, look, if they lose a game, it is what it is. But, hey, you just hope they keep winning. That's all you can ask for. And at the end of the year, if they go, 37-1, okay, who cares if they lose one game? Because that means more likely than not, you're probably winning the national championship. Jeff 2001 says, I wonder what is the longest winning streak against Clemson in any sport. How many years has Dawn beat Clemson in a row? Well, let's take a gander, shall we? Look, I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to pull up these numbers right off the top of this live stream here, because I was actually looking it up before a little bit, and it pulled up football, because obviously, I guess when you type in Clemson versus South Carolina history. Actually, I found it. Thank you, AI. That's the one nice thing about Google, y'all, is AI has literally changed everything. And whether you like AI or not, that's a whole other topic. But it does give me the answer. South Carolina has beaten Clemson, and if this is correct, 13 straight games. So it's the longest streak in the series, and the streak began back in 2010. So Clemson's last win was in 2009. Against the women's team. So that's really impressive. And I think goes to show just how good this program has been under Dawn Staley ever since she arrived in Columbia. So that is really neat. R.L. Smith says Joyce Edwards has a lot of turnovers, but the game and learning her new team is still new. The game will slow down for her, and she will gel with everyone by SEC play. Spot on. Look, it worried me how many turnovers she's had throughout this first 4 games of the year. But you know what? It's kind of like with men's basketball and Cam Scott, because these are the 2 new kids on the block. They are going to go through some struggles. It is bound to happen. The greatest players in the world go through struggles. It is human. That's the main thing. Losing and struggling, it is all natural. It happens, right? And even the best are going to fall sometimes. So, look, Joyce, Cam, whoever it is, they are all going to be fine eventually. Again, think about all the pressure they have too. Joyce Edwards, the top recruit for South Carolina coming into this year. It's a lot of expectations. And look, she's gonna learn. The fact that she's going out here and actually playing well, it seems like. 12 points on 5 of 10 shooting, and yeah, she had 2 turnovers, but she also had 2 blocks and 1 steal in 20 minutes against ECU. So there is progress that she's making, and as long as she's minimizing the turnovers, I think you got to feel pretty good about where she's at. So, look, the schedule, like I said, is going to get tough from here. We're going to learn a lot about this team over the next 6 games. And if they come our way, like if they go into that South Florida game on December 15th at 10-0 on the year, that just tells me, look, they might lose a game. They might lose a game in SEC play or something, but like this team's going to be fine. Like, even if they lose a game in non-con, they're going to be fine. I have no doubt about that. And that's what we should expect with this team. Look, I know you guys know this. Like, they are a great team. Like, I don't have to really repeat it. Like, as long as Dawn Staley's in Columbia, never count South Carolina out. Like, even if there's a bad year, like, you can't count South Carolina out. Like, they're going to get to the tournament pretty much every year. They have the best program in the country, and they're bringing the best recruits. So, look, It's taking a little time to mesh, obviously, as it does with all teams. So once we get towards SEC play, we'll see what this team's really made of. But obviously, this is a good early stretch to see, okay, just how much progress has this team made. And speaking of progress, going to switch it over to men's basketball. Again, Jamie Shaw will be joining me here in a few minutes to talk men's basketball. But I wanted to switch it over to the men's side of things real quick for a few minutes. And we'll talk more men's hoops and wrap this thing up with a little bit of women's kind of towards the end of the show after we're done talking with Jamie about recruiting. But obviously, I did not cover this game over the weekend and because I was at football, but South Carolina was in Bloomington and lost 87-71 to Indiana. And I'm sure a lot of you guys were watching this game, but I do think it's not surprising to see South Carolina lose to Indiana, but it's like you felt like, man, deep down, maybe they could have won this game. But the problem was they were playing from behind seemingly the entire game. I mean, they had an early lead, but Indiana went on a 14-0 run early, and it was just too much to overcome from there. And couple that with the fact that South Carolina just was struggling. I mean, they were turning the ball over a good bit. Colin Murray-Boyles only had 2 points in 19 minutes, and part of that is due to the fact that he fouled out. But it's also like, I mean, you got to get more production. Like, you got to get consistency. And I think Nick Pringle had a good game, 13 and 11 for a double-double is pretty good. Jamari Thomas, 5 of 14 from the floor. I thought he looked better. And then Miles Stewie's 4 of 14 from the floor. So, I mean, look, it's not great, but it's like, I mean, look, you lost by 16. That's not necessarily ideal. And to help talk some men's hoops here, bringing On3's own Jamie Shaw. Jamie, how we doing, man?
Jack, man, I'm good. How about yourself?
I'm doing great, man. It's been a long time since we caught up. Liking the Braves hat with the camo look. Are you a big Braves fan?
Man, growing up in Myrtle Beach, it was during the time of the Big Three with Tom Glavine and Greg Maddux and John Smoltz. You had some Steve Avery in there coming through with Chipper Jones and Mark Lemke and Andrew Jones. And yeah, it was a big deal. Braves were a big deal growing up.
Yeah, no, I can imagine. Hey, growing up right in the heap of when they were winning pennants and stuff. That's awesome, man. But thanks for joining me. Appreciate it. Wanted to talk a lot about this signing class for South Carolina men's basketball because I think we've all been waiting a long time to see this day come where South Carolina's had all these great recruits that Lamont Paris has been bringing in. I feel like we've heard about all these guys for such a long time, but it's finally happened. And I know we had to wait a little bit longer to see Hayden Nesemian and Eli Ellis sign, but they all are signed now, and it's official. So what can you just say straight off the top here with what South Carolina is getting from these four guys? And then we'll dive a little bit into each one more specifically. But just as a general whole, how good does this signing class look for South Carolina?
Well, I think the big thing that Lamont Paris did with this class was he got players who wanted to be at South Carolina. He targeted specific players. Didn't cast a very wide net in the recruiting process, targeted several players and went out and got the guys that wanted to be at the University of South Carolina that fit specific skill sets that brought the things that he's looking for. A lot of times when you see Lamont Paris going out, he wants skill, he wants shooting, he wants mental toughness. This class has toughness, it has skill, it has shooting. A lot of the things that Lamont Paris wants to have his team built around.
Yeah, definitely. And I think they got four guys in here who, I mean, do you think they could come in and make an immediate impact? I think with freshmen at South Carolina, look, Colin Murray-Boyles and Gigi Jackson and Cam Scott are the obvious examples of, hey, like you can be an in-state guy and come play right away at South Carolina. But you also have guys like Arden Conyers and Austin Hero who have had to wait their turn a little bit. And I think you're going to see the same thing now with Weston Cogshill and Lance Piper. But do you expect, I know fortune teller type moment here, but do you expect these guys to make that immediate impact? And if so, who specifically would you imagine making that early impact?
I think what they will be given is the opportunity to make the impact. How a freshman reacts to the speed of the game, we're seeing it right now with Cam Scott. You see it in the football side all the time. How they react to the speed of the game, the processing, how they clean up their bad habits to get them prepared to play at the collegiate level. The SEC, fast and athletic. You have to be quick with the ball. You have to be quick with your decisions. I think a lot of that plays into how ready these guys will be. I don't think that any of these four are surefire guys that are going to be day one starters. But I think all four of them will have the opportunity if things break right, depending on what the roster looks like when it comes to the transfer portal, who comes back, who stays, and all that type of stuff. I think they'll have opportunity to play their ways into a role.
Let's talk about Eli Ellis first. I feel like he is the main star in this recruiting class for South Carolina because, he's the highest rated recruit that South Carolina has brought in for next season. And look, he's a 4-star guy, point guard, shooting guard, 6'1", 190. I've heard about him for such a long time now. And he just, anytime I see clips of him on Twitter or whatever, it's him going out there and scoring like 40, 50 points or whatever. What can you say about him and the type of player he is? Is he that scoring first type of guard, or is he a guy that can just kind of do it all?
I think the two things that stick out the most with Eli Ellis, and I've known Eli, I've been watching Eli since probably the 6th grade or so, is the mental toughness and the confidence that he brings to the floor. He just exudes. He just oozes confidence. He started playing varsity basketball with his Moravian prep team in the 6th grade. He was playing against older players and took his lumps early and continued to have success. And then by the time in 8th grade, he's putting up 15, 20 points a game on the varsity level, playing that national schedule that Moravian plays. So I think the thing that Eli brings that you'll see is the mental toughness and the confidence. So far this season, overtime elite, he's averaging 31.2 points per game. They've played only 5 games, but 31.2 through the first 5 games of the season that he's putting up. And you're seeing all the highlight clips of it. You're seeing the flair that he does it with. But again, with Eli, what it is, the confidence that he brings is it's unique.
Yeah, no, definitely. It definitely seems like he plays with that type of swagger and just like the confidence, like you said, of a guy who knows he can go out and get buckets. But I want to talk about his teammate now at Moravian Prep, Hayden Assemian. He moved there, and now he's duoing it up with Eli Ellis. What can you say about him, and how much does it help that these two, him and Eli, are already playing together? And how do you feel like that helps the transition of going to college next year?
With Hayden, he's got an interesting background. He started off Powdersville High School. He was a quarterback to start off his high school career, picked up some multiple ACC offers as a quarterback early on, transferred to Legacy early college as a sophomore, played the national schedule, went back to Powdersville, won a state championship in basketball. And then for a senior year, he's now playing at Moravian Prep, national schedule, OTE, all that stuff. What you're seeing with Hayden is the physicality. He brings that football mentality to the basketball court. He's extremely explosive, and he does the kind of the dirty work. Standing at about 6'6", he's really transformed his body over the last year or so, where he slimmed down, and now he's adding weight, appropriate weight, getting stronger to his frame. Very physical, very explosive. I think that's what you're going to see for him is the explosiveness. Once he adds weight, once he continues to get a lot stronger, get with Scott Greenwalt in the weight program at South Carolina, you're going to see somebody who's got top level SEC athleticism with a physical frame, and he's not afraid to stick his nose in there and kind of do the dirty work, defend multiple positions, grab the rebound, go for putback dunks, offensive boards, do kind of the tough guy stuff, the kind of things that not everybody likes to do. He can kind of find his role in there and kind of make those type of things happen in an SEC floor.
Yeah, and he's already listed at like 6'6", 235. So, you're right about Scott. In the strength staff there, I can only imagine how much bigger he's going to get when he comes to college. And speaking of being big and stuff, South Carolina is going to probably be losing a few guys in the front court for next season. Nick Pringle came here, one and done with being a transfer and stuff. They're obviously going to lose BBV because he'll be out of eligibility. And then I would assume Colin Murray Boyles is probably going to the NBA draft, and he'll be a highly sought after pick there. But they are bringing in EJ Walker, who from what he's listed as, it seems like he's a guy who can play multiple spots on the floor, which I think is a really underrated skill set to have. What is it about EJ that stands out, and where do you feel like he's best suited for this team in the future?
Kind of with EJ Walker, what you get is you'll see some shades of a BJ Mack type role carved out for him eventually. Obviously, Mack was in his 5th year when he came to South Carolina, but EJ's a guy who likes to play facing the basket. He's 6'7", 6'8", in that range. So good positional size. Once he transforms his body, gets in the college weight room, he's somebody who can dribble, shoot, and pass. Coach's kid, he's skilled, and he's got size. Prefers to play facing the basket. But I think that BJ Mack kind of role, I think you could be able to see shades of EJ kind of growing into that type of role at USC.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's a really good comparison with BJ Mack and stuff. And look, BJ was solid in his 1 year at South Carolina. And I think it's good that, make that comparison. If EJ's anything close to BJ, you have him for an extended amount of time. And along those same lines, the last guy I want to talk to you about, Grant Polk, pretty sure he might have been the latest to commit to South Carolina and sign and stuff. So with him, 3-star small forward, 6'6", 185. It seems like he is the shooter in this group for the forwards and stuff. Does that sound about right? And what does he bring to the table?
Big time shooter. This summer, Adidas circuit, shot 45.7% from the three on 8.7 attempts per game. And he's in the 6'6", 6'7" range. And he's a shooter. Shades, I guess, speaking to South Carolina history, you'll probably see some shades, some similarities to Travis Kraft, who played in the late 90s, early 2000s at South Carolina. He can just really shoot the ball. He plays with some mental toughness. He knows how to play. He knows what he can do on the floor. And he's got some confidence in his jump shot, naturally so, connecting on 45%, over 45% of them with almost on high volume with almost 9 attempts per game.
Yeah, it seems like a really exciting signing class for South Carolina. And look, 4 guys coming in to make an impact. And South Carolina's going to have to replace a lot of pieces. Look, obviously they got their guys for next year, but in terms of the future and stuff, what else? I mean, look, we don't know exactly who they're going to lose and stuff moving forward, but what else is there anything else you feel like they might need moving forward in terms of things on the court?
Yeah, I think point guard play and 5-man, the point guard and the 5-man, I think for me coming into this season were the 2 biggest question marks that I had with what this team would look like. And I think moving forward, I think the point guard position and the 5-man spot are spots that you need to be solidified. They're the bookends on the court, the bookends of the team. They're what you need. You have to have good 1s and 5s to have success. So I think that, along with some shooting, you can never have too much shooting on the court at the same time. I feel like our places to look at.
Definitely. I got just a few more for you here. Obviously, South Carolina fans, some of them are probably, tuned into what's going on in the recruiting world and stuff. But for those who might not know much about this signing class in general, just how would you describe the way these players are? Because obviously we spoke about them in detail earlier, but truly, what can South Carolina fans expect from this signing class, and what is their ceiling, you think, in general?
I think what South Carolina did was they went out and got guys who have skills.
We might be losing Jamie here. Can you hear me?
I feel like what they did was they went out and got guys with skill sets that translate. When you look across the board, Grant Polk, he's a high-level shooter. When you look at Hayden Simeon, he's the physicality and the toughness that he brings. When you look at Eli Ellis, the confidence that he has with his abilities. And then you have EJ Walker, who's got size and skill. So what they have is something with each player that they can mold and fit their game around and grow into. Now, what it comes from expectations, again, as we touched on a little bit earlier, is to be seen with how quickly they can adapt to the speed of the game, with how quickly they can adapt to the processing of what's happening on the court surrounding them. But each person coming in has a defined skill set, a defined role, a defined trait that will translate to the high level.
Now,
It's
I know
it's just a matter of how they build around that one trait they have.
Definitely. Now, I know you watch loads of college basketball, but with this South Carolina team in general, just from this year's standpoint, look, I know it's only a few games, and yeah, they lost to Indiana and North Florida, but what do you make of the start they've gotten off to, and why should fans feel confident that this team is going to be fine in the long run?
I think what this team has that they didn't have last year, Lamont Paris is a defensive-minded coach. He's made no ifs, ands, or buts about that, and I think this team has a lot of defensive versatility. Figuring out the offensive side of the ball is the step, and how quickly that can happen, the rotations and all that type of stuff. With that, will go a long way in deciding how far this team can go. However, the baseline of this team is relatively high because of the defensive side of the things. They have a lot of guys with length. They have a lot of guys with versatility, guys who can guard multiple spots. They have big, long guys who are able to slide their feet with perimeter-based players and also switch down and disrupt things on the block as well. They have a big man in Nick Pringle, who's a versatile defender who can move his feet a little bit. They have a couple guys who aren't afraid. Jamari Thomas able to heat up the point of attack on the defensive end of the floor. So I think the defensive side of things gives this team a baseline to where the bottom will not fall out. You know what you can get from them. You know you're going to get some defensive stuff from them. You know that they're going to limit the other teams. They're going to make other teams uncomfortable with what they're able to do defensively. Now it's just about finding the rotations within that defense of being able to score the basketball consistently. And that I think we'll see how long or how far this team can go. But I think the baseline is relatively high with what they bring on the defensive end, what they bring with the experience, and what they bring with guys, the versatility and the creative things you're able to do on the defensive end of the floor.
Definitely. Good stuff as always, Jamie. Appreciate you hopping on. Before I let you get out of here, I always do this with all my guests. If you want to just share what you got going on, I know you got a lot of good work out there, and where can the people find you and all your work on social media or On3?
Yeah, so today's the final day of signing day, the early signing period. Next one begins in April. So the focus goes from recruiting. A couple guys haven't signed yet, a couple top-level guys, a couple 5-stars. I think there's 5 of them. That haven't signed yet, so we'll see. So we'll be tracking those recruitments. Also, the college basketball world, national scene, NBA draft type stuff, the recruiting world rankings coming up for the 26, 27 classes as the calendar flips. So kind of just basketball in general. We try to take it from the beginning of a player's career all the way up to NBA draft night. So tell the stories and all that. On3 is the website, national site, on3.com. On3 recruits on Twitter. My personal Twitter, Jamie Shaw 5. JAMIESHAW 5 is where you can find it. And make sure you check out on3.com.
Yeah, most definitely. Jamie, appreciate you hopping on, my man, and we'll do this again soon.
Jack, thank you so much, man.
Yeah, appreciate it as always. That was Jamie Shaw from On3. Always appreciate him hopping on to talk some hoops. And again, you can go ahead and follow him on social media at Jamie Shaw 5. I'll leave it on screen here for a few minutes, but really appreciate him hopping on, giving some nice insight as to what we can expect with this signing class that South Carolina's brought. And again, I'm really excited about what they've got. I think, like he said, they're bringing in unique skill sets that are really going to serve this team well moving forward. And we'll see if they make any of these guys make an immediate impact. If I had to guess or take a wager at probably one that would, I feel like we're going to see some of those guys in the front court, like an E.J. Walker or Hayden Nesemian, if he can get up to the right size and all that. But I think we could see some of those guys with what South Carolina's losing in the front court make a big impact next season and beyond. So once again, really appreciate Jamie hopping on, and you can go ahead and follow him on X, Jamie Shaw 5. And let's get back into the conversation of men's basketball for a few more minutes here before we wrap up. Like I said before, Jamie hopped on. Look, the Indiana loss, it's not surprising, but it's just like I'm surprised at how early it kind of felt like things were kind of a wrap. Like Indiana went on that 14-0 run, like I said, and it just felt like from there, South Carolina was never really able to get back in the game. And they cut the lead down to single digits at one point, but get it to where it's like, okay, they're going to take the lead here and they're going to go on from there. It just never felt like that, to be honest. And I think that's probably like the one thing that I'm like, all right, well, look, we learned a lot about this team over this one game stretch where, look, they don't need to be getting into foul trouble. They almost had two other guys foul out with Nick Pringle and Jamari Thomas both picking up 4 fouls apiece. So you need to make sure that those guys are staying out of foul trouble, as well as your best player in CMB. Only 2 points out of him in 19 minutes and 6 rebounds. Look, I know he didn't have a great day. He also had 4 turnovers to lead the team. But it's like when he's out there, he could have made such a big difference in this game, considering that, Omar Ballo only had 7 points in 30 minutes. And he had 13 rebounds, but and he had 6 blocks, which is also freaking insane. But you put him up against CMB or, Nick Pringle was up against him, obviously, but like you put CMB up against him, it's like, is there a difference? And it's the same thing with some of these other guys. Like Miles Rice had a huge game, 23 points, 7 of 10 shooting. I mean, look, Indiana, I thought did enough to win this game, but I feel like South Carolina just gave away a lot of opportunities. And again, Indiana only trailed for 2.5 minutes of this game. So, look, there's a lot of work to do for South Carolina. They're obviously going to be, playing Mercer tomorrow night at CLA. That should be a win. Mercer in KenPom is ranked 255. And in case you're wondering, South Carolina is ranked 71st in KenPom. And they're projected to go 14-16 on the year and 6-12 in conference play. And look, that's just what a computer says. So that could all change if South Carolina goes and beats Xavier out in Fort Myers on Monday and then beats Clemson on December 17th and picks up some wins there, because I think things will change with the projections and stuff. But for right now, because you have a 4-game sample size and they're not giving South Carolina much credit when it comes to conference play, you're seeing them potentially finish under 500 based on what a computer says. I still think this team has a good chance to get things right and move up and have a good year, get back to the tournament, but it's going to take a lot of work. Like that North Florida loss, you had a real chance to make that feel like a distant memory, because, if you beat Indiana, it's like, oh, okay, like this team's, they're fine. Like they're on track. It was just one game where North Florida had their best shooting night, but however you spin it, that's going to go down as a quad 4 loss to open the year. And we're going to be talking about that game probably throughout the rest of this entire season. And if South Carolina starts dropping more of these games in non-conference play, so like if they drop one to Sean Miller and Xavier, if they lose to Michigan or Virginia Tech in the next game of the Fort Myers tournament, and then you lose to Clemson, it's like, oh boy, this might be a long season for South Carolina in terms of what they want to do, because conference play picks up and you don't really have much time to breathe because you're playing Mississippi State in Starkville right out of the gate. Then it's back-to-back home games in what could be probably the most pivotal week of the season. Alabama, then Auburn. That might tell you, like, if South Carolina loses both those games, like, and they've already dropped a bunch in non-conference play, that might tell you, like, this is not going to be, especially if they lose in not great fashion, might be a long year. But you know what? I'm holding out hope that this team's going to be fine. I think they have the team to get back to the tournament. It's just, can the pieces come together? Can they mesh and can they get going here? Now, I will say, for all the issues that South Carolina seemingly had in the Indiana game, they did have 4 double-digit scores. And who would have guessed that Morris Ugasok coming off the bench would have led the team with 18 points on 5 of 8 shooting and 4 of 6 from 3 in 28 minutes. I don't know if you insert him into the starting lineup, but I feel like that just adds a whole nother layer to this team and what they can do, because you got guys like that coming off the bench and scoring at that rate. You feel pretty good, but you need to see Morris do it consistently, because I feel like that was his coming out game. And we've seen him have some good games, but we need to see it more and more consistently. And you need to see more guys hit shots. Like, again, it was not a great day from 3-point range. 8 of 29 is not going to cut it. 38% from the floor in general is not going to cut it. So you got to be better in that area. And you also need to be better on the defensive end of the floor too. Because, look, you cannot be going ice cold, not scoring for a period of time, and then hope that your defense is going to be able to bail you out. You got to be able to do a little bit of both. And we need to see South Carolina be more consistent, I think. It's early. It's 4 games into the year. They're 2-2. Long way to go in this season. But it's like, just like with the women's team, we could really learn a lot about this team before non-conference play even starts. We learned a lot about them these first 4 games, but we're going to kind of know, like, okay, what kind of team is South Carolina going to have this year? Are they going to struggle to get through non-conference play, or is it going to be like last year where, granted, the schedule is a lot tougher this year, but is it going to be like last year where South Carolina kind of has a good run in non-conference play? We'll have to see. Should be very interesting. Got a question here from R.L. Smith, and this is where we'll start to wrap it up a little bit. Which teams do you think are the biggest threats to South Carolina in the SEC this year? And if we're talking, I'm assuming this is about women's hoops, you just look at the schedule. I think the biggest threat to South Carolina is probably Texas and LSU. That's just my general opinion. I think Texas, being in the SEC, don't discount Oklahoma as well. This stretch that South Carolina has in SEC play for women's hoops is insane. I'll read it off to you. January 12th, number 4 Texas at CLA. It's at number 24 Alabama on January 16th. January 19th, home versus number 9 Oklahoma. Then it's home on January 23rd versus number 7 LSU. That is a really tough 4-game stretch at the beginning of SEC play in the first month of conference play. That might tell you, like, what could happen. And look, I said it before. If South Carolina women's get through this little gauntlet in non-conference play that they have coming up, starting tonight with Clemson, can they get through it? And then can they get through this little stretch here? I think that we're going to learn. We're going to learn so much about these teams. And in terms of biggest threats, though, I would probably say Texas, Oklahoma. A little sleeper here. I think Kentucky might end up having they might end up having a nice little season. I think they got a new coach now. They beat Louisville the other night, and that's a really big win for Kentucky there. But a long way to go. I think Texas, Oklahoma, and then sleeper pick Kentucky are probably the biggest challengers to South Carolina. But South Carolina, as long as South Carolina just does what they do best, which is play winning basketball, I don't know who can beat them. That's kind of how I feel about it. So we'll have to see what happens. So on both sides, women's hoops travels to Clemson tonight, 5 p.m. at Clemson. Big game. Should be a really exciting one on ESPN2. We'll have all coverage for you here on GamecockCentral.com. We'll have the game stories from Chris Wellbaum. We'll have everything Dawn Staley said and everything Clemson said after the game. Should be very interesting. And then men's hoops, I will be back at CLA tomorrow night as the South Carolina Gamecocks men's basketball team takes on Mercer in a game that South Carolina should win at 7 p.m. Obviously, it's going to be on SEC Network Plus, ESPN Plus. So definitely check it out on streaming if you want to watch. But if not and you're in town, go check out the Gamecocks because they definitely need all the support they can get. So should be a really exciting next few weeks of hoops. Next week, the men's team and the women's team will both be out in Florida at Fort Myers. So I know it's Thanksgiving week next week, but we'll be doing GC Live at the Buzzer. Probably won't be doing it next Wednesday just because that's the day before Thanksgiving. Maybe. We'll see. But we might be doing it on Tuesday, the day after South Carolina plays Xavier next Monday. So should be a lot of fun, and we'll see what happens, y'all. It's going to be a lot of fun these next few weeks as football starts to slow down a little bit and basketball really heats up. And hopefully we're talking about some good stretch runs here where both teams are picking up a lot of wins. So be sure to stay locked into GamecockCentral.com for all live coverage and updates for both basketball with men's and women's, and obviously football's rolling on. So should be a lot of fun. Until next time, I'm Jack Veltri for GamecockCentral.com, and I will see you guys next week for the next edition of GC Live at the Buzzer. Have a great rest of your week, guys.